All right, this is June 19th, 2017. This is Yalak, another video dealing with the set of thoughts I'm having about Adam. Okay, so my lesson is entitled Eden is a Crime Scene. So, of course, I've been thinking about this whole matter of writing. As you've heard my videos that I've done on the whole bit about was Adam able to write? Some may have thought it interesting, some thought it's just crazy. And it's still an ongoing issue because I really find it strange that one such as the Creator, who is filled with so much wisdom and knowledge that would make our heads spin to create a world like this, would use wisdom to get done all that he did, and gave us even, might I call it, manual of life, the scrolls, right, which they try to call the Bible these days. And no one was there as to write these things down right away. I notice as I'm trying to learn Torah these days, having learned something else in the Christian church for 3 decades, that my eyes are starting to open up and I'm actually thinking for myself, which is great. The problem is thinking like this just brings more and more frustration because there are so many answers, so many things that elude you. As I look at Eden now as a crime scene, I can see that something was really stolen from mankind. They didn't want to say it was a man because I see men doing evil, killing other people, taking over other countries, starving some of us, poisoning our foods, and so on and so forth. And food was a big thing in the garden. One of the initial instructions the Creator had was, here's the food you should eat, just don't touch this other kind of tree, but you can eat the other from the other trees. So food was a big thing. And now we find we're eating poison is spraying our foods and so on. So obviously, in the crime scene setting of Eden, our food was taken away from us. And eating the wrong food now just lets us get sick. And we got to replace the food that we're eating with pills that kill us even quicker. So there was some really great crimes committed in Eden. That the food thing is just one of it, by having us kicked out of the supermarket that nature gave us. Now we have to go to another supermarket that has chopped up pieces of animal flesh where they pulled off almost with their bare hands the hairy skins of the animals, but sometimes they leave the hair on it and just shave off the skins, and they chop up the small parts of the animals. Well, they chop up the animals in small parts, keep them cool on some metal shelves in a modern supermarket, and tell you, take up these pieces of chopped up animals, and that's $7.99. Go home and eat that. But the Creator had said, eat all these greeneries and herbs and so on. So some crimes really seem to have been committed and our world is upside down. There's some missing evidence and so on. This crime scene, a supposed angel turned demon, supposedly some master angel called Satan, is responsible for all of this crime. But it seems when I look at it, they just didn't want to tell us that somebody who looks like us was tempting in the garden, because it's people who tempt other people. And but they call him an enchanter. And all the enchanters I've met in my life look like they have 2 hands and 2 feet the way I do. And they study and practice enchantment. And they're people to the point where the Creator warned in different places in Torah to be careful of these enchanters because they are men. He was pointing out that men practice enchantment. But an enchanter shows up in the garden and all of a sudden he needs to be called a snake, and then someone else interprets it as a serpent. I'm not sure why they couldn't just leave it as a snake, but they interpret the snake as an angel. I'm not sure also why they didn't interpret the snake as an animal as opposed to an angel, or interpret the snake as a stone. Something let them make the leap from a snake to an angel, but not something else. But there seems to be some missing evidence in this crime scene at Eden. A wise creator who, in the sheer unmatched power of his supra-intelligence and wisdom, created everything that we see. And some people want to tell us that this is all by chance, some amoeba split or came together and so on, made all of this just some big bang and so on, and everything just came together. And there is no intelligent creator behind it and so on, which seems very odd to me. It would seem to me that puny man trying to thinks these things of the creator, that he's non-existent and that he could not have made this world, that they struggle to match up to by just trying or attempting to scratch the surface of it all. Think of it that if you were, just for imagination's sake now, if you were able to have been there to be the first living creature or being, and you wanted to create something, you certainly wouldn't have thought of making a heaven and an earth. Because everything I know that man creates, he creates it from the wisdom that first created all these things that we associate with in the world, in our mundane experiences. And from these associations, we have other ideas that grow in us, and we go on to experimenting and testing and trying until we make these things that we make. For instance, you're already walking, you are already moving, so you make something to move faster. It turns out to be something that has wheels with it, a cart and so on. Eventually we turn it into a car. But if you were not in motion before, you wouldn't have made a car. So with there being nothing but you just being the first and the only living being, you would not have thought to create a heaven and an earth, because there was no such thing as heaven and earth, like Torah says, in order for you to conceptualize heaven and earth. But the Creator / the God of Israel is so far removed from us in his capabilities and so on, like the scriptures say, my thoughts are not like your thoughts and so on. My ways are not like yours. So he's just in a class by himself. And without anything to map drawings of or thoughts of, he comes up with this map in his mind of what he wants to do, how he's going to get it done. He comes up with these thoughts all on his own. Without anything to model something of, he creates that which is a model, and it becomes the model by which, in his mind, by which he's going to make and express everything else. Then he says, let there be, and it was. Then he looked at it, said it was good, and it was done, and so on. And it was the first and second and third day. And that model, we build off that model when we create all the other things that we do. So without a heaven he conceptualizes a heaven without an earth. He creates in his mind the model of an earth, and he expresses that thought or model by creating it. So he's clearly in a class by himself. The kind of thought that goes into the thoughtless or the non-existent things that are thought to make them exist is just something that is beyond us. This is the power or the God of Torah, as I am finding out. So, this same power that created everything else, he is so meticulous in everything that he does, such that as Torah reveals, we can also look at nature and see the wonders in it and see how everything works together, the ecosystem, how animals feed, the food chain and so on, how the weather works. Everything just works and just clicks together. The breeze, the times when it gets stronger, the times when it gets softer, the movement of clouds from one part of the earth to the next, the coming and going of the sun, and how it's so reliable, things like that, like ants go about their ways, and you even watch them just to learn wisdom from them, like the scriptures talk about, and they prepare for their food, and nobody's sitting down and teaching them anything like they're dumb creatures, because they're not smart like man. But while they're not running out of food because they know how to plan and prepare, we run out of food sometimes. And all this thought goes into creation. So we're talking about an ultra smart God. And nobody's there to write down these things when he makes man. But someone is able to, a couple thousand years after probably, or a few hundred years later, whatever the case is able to somehow get this information later on just by the word of mouth passing on of people who remember what it was like to talk to somebody who remembered what it was like to talk to somebody who remembered what it was like to talk to somebody else who knew somebody else who knew, who was a descendant of this, until they said Adam was my father and Eve was my mother. And these people have an uncanny ability to recollect all these different generations of people without seemingly any error. You and I can only find out our parents and great-grandparents so much, so we have to pay someone a lot of times to find out who our own great-grandparents were. And we pay them online to search for it and so on. But these people, they just remember all these things going way back to Adam, yet nobody actually wrote them down at the time when they happened. I find that very incredible. You see, for me, the spiritual element is not missing at all just because I feel the need to question something that I see in Torah. Torah actually becomes more valuable to me the more I am able to ask, because I find that I'm not able to exhaust the book that is connected to the God I believe in. So with all of this fine-tuned effort that goes into creating everything, no one documents at the time these things that were done, but every time that I read certain key events in Torah as time goes on with the Israelites and patriarchs and so on, certain major things get written down. They're communicated and they're written down. But the biggest event of all, which was the creation of everything that we know that was involved in that has to deal with making the heaven and the earth, the biggest creation of all, the biggest happenstance, does not get written down. Until much later, I mean. Look at this from Genesis chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that Elohim created man, in the likeness of Elohim made he him. That's the King James. This is now reading it from Holy Bible, the NRSV. That's the New Revised Standard Version. This is the Catholic edition. That same verse here from Genesis 5, verse 1, it reads, "This is the list of the descendants of Adam when God created humankind. He made them in the likeness of God." Now, when I hear this phrase, "this is the book," and then this phrase, "in the day that," what that tells me is that there was a record made either about that time and creation, or a record made at the time of that creation. And at the time may not necessarily mean as it is happening, but could be shortly after. Like, let's say you bring something up in court. They said, "When did you write?" I wrote it when it happened. They said, "You're dealing with a 5-year-old crime." I wrote it when it happened. Might not necessarily mean you write it as the person is committing the crime, but it could just mean you went home and you wrote it right away, or a few minutes later, or later that evening, you documented it in your phone or in a book or something like that. So it's, it still seems like it's at the time that you documented it, as opposed to you documented it 4 or 5 years later from memory. So in the day that he created man, and this is the book of the generations of that time, in the day when, or at the time when he did it. So it seems like the writer in Genesis is trying to communicate to us that a 1 or 2 or 3,000 year later documentation of these events that happened in the creation story is as plausible and trustworthy as if it was written down in the day when they happened. But that becomes a problem because apparently no one was writing until Sumer, they tell us. Are you starting to see why I'm questioning these things about writing? Because I find it very incredible that if man was in the garden, then just shortly after Adam, let's say 500 to 1,000 years after Adam, writing started. Because some give different dates for when the Garden of Eden was really set up and Adam was born and so on, or created. So let's say 500 to 1,000 years after Eden was set up, that writing started at Sumer. Adam doesn't seem to have any writing, and apparently he wasn't in Sumer. So somebody else did all the writing, and they remembered all these fine details that are so well remembered that there's no mistake in Torah. None. And you say, well, that's just because it's a revelation from God. Now I ask you, does God really need somebody to get a revelation of things that he did a long time ago, when man could have written the stuff down a long time ago when they were happening, or very, very soon after they happened? My daughter was writing a long time ago when she was nowhere close to being ready for school. Of course, it doesn't look like how she writes today, but she was still writing. She was learning to write. And I mean, it was just so shocking. I mean, are you ready for this? But there she was with the pen, holding it as if she'd been holding a pen for a couple of years. It was incredible. But Adam lived and died and never wrote. The man lived just about 1,000 years almost, and he never wrote. Then as you go through the Bible, you look at different verses that show that it seems God has a book, or at least more than one. He takes the time so much to talk about write this in a book. So he's concerned with writing, but at the start of the whole thing, he doesn't feel any need for anybody to write anything in Eden. He doesn't feel the first man, Adam, should write anything down for the generations after him, to get the same kind of instruction so nobody messes up. The Creator doesn't seem concerned that Adam might not remember to pass on all the details, because he must have said other stuff to Adam than what's in the Bible. You mean Adam wakes up from his pre-sleep state of having never existed, and he does not have more than just 1,000 questions about what is happening, where am I, what is this, what's that big bright thing in the sky? He doesn't have any questions, none. And if he's getting all this information, he doesn't have any concern that he might forget all the things that the Creator is speaking to him, and that it also needs to be passed on to future generations, or at least his children and so on. He doesn't have any need to write anything. But the Creator is so concerned with writing that whenever he does some drastic things, man needs to take account of it, make notes of it. Even at Sinai, it says the finger of God wrote. So the Creator is doing a big move at Sinai, and he writes. Abraham starts to move from his house because of what the Creator is doing. This is a big thing in his life, and somehow we've found that writings are connected to Abraham. Apparently, he had some kind of laws similar to the Sinai laws before they were dropped at Sinai. And you hear all this stuff about the Ugaritic texts and so on. I mean, there was stuff before Sinai. So somebody was writing some real ancient stuff before the children of Israel were called the children of Israel, before they became a nation. People were writing stuff before, but they tell us writing started at Sumer. Okay, so all of that's going on. You say, okay, it's still possible. But there again now, somehow it seems Abraham had some kind of writings with him, had some kind of laws. Things were documented because they were finding stuff. But at Eden, the biggest move of all, just to create all of this that we see, to create the world, nobody wrote anything. Adam didn't feel, I need to make notes of this. Every one of the pagan religions that I have known of felt it necessary to somehow scribe certain key things about their God so that their God can live on in the minds of others in their empire and even after that. And they want you to know something about their God by writing stuff at the time when it happened. It doesn't get written later on. They write it as their empire is flourishing. But the greatest empire at Eden, and nobody writes anything. Because apparently everyone who comes after Adam is more skilled and more advanced than Adam. But Adam doesn't have all this skill and advancement and knowledge and so on like people who would come later on. Yet this, pardon me, dumb man seems to be qualified to be the first one to have encountered the Creator, not because he died, but while he was living. In fact, he was the first one to have actually had the Creator pump some breath from his own mouth into him. This man didn't come alive because of a woman. Yes, you're going to give me your Torah mysteries and say, well, the spirit and whatever is mother and so on. This man didn't have a mother like Eve, like you and I got pushed out of a womb. This man came to life directly because of interaction with the Creator. Physical interaction. Because if he's making him from the dust of the ground, he had to have been handled physically, because he ends up having a physical body the same way you and I have a physical body. Listen to my notes here. The problem with Adam is that we have a man in touch with the Creator. Oh, by the way, before I get into that, I was going on to say, with more of the big events, that things are always written down, it seems. Even with Israel, with their wars and so on, and when the Most High does something drastic to deliver them, and fire is coming down from heaven, burning up armies or whatever is going on, and plagues of Egypt and so on. All these things always get written down. Look at this other scripture. Where is this now? I think this is Numbers. Yeah, Numbers chapter 33, verse 1. These are the journeys of the children of Israel. That means somebody is writing this stuff down because something big just happened, which went forth out of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to, which means they're paying attention to details, to document stuff, according to the journeys by the commandment of the Most High. By the commandment, by the word, by the instruction. Yet the Most High gave words of instructions repeatedly in Genesis, saying, let there be, let there be, let there be. And the first man comes on the scene, Adam, and learns all this stuff, and he never writes and documents any of this. But everybody else in Torah who encounters the same Creator felt it so important to write all these striking things about the Creator all the time, to give him praise and to pass on these instructions and memoirs onto future generations. And the first man never thought that was important. And he didn't even tell us how to get back to the Garden of Eden. Till every one of us who looks at it, we have our own Garden of Eden. If 7 billion people are on the planet, and all 7 billion of us look into Eden, maybe 7 billion of us would have 7 billion locations for where Eden is. Because everybody seems to want to have their own Eden location. I know where it is, it's in Iraq. I know where it is, it's over here. I know where it is, it's this, it's that. And none of them is saying, I mean, Anyway, so then you find again now another big thing is coming, where out of this present captivity in modern times, when we're coming out of this captivity, there's going to be future writings, because we're definitely going to document how the Most High delivered us from this new Babylon. Because we will never want to forget that. So every time something major happens where the God of Israel / the Creator does something great and miraculous and powerful, it seems to get written down. Write this in a book, write this in a book, seal up the book, so on, which means writings were happening. But the creation, nobody wrote that at the time. But many years later, somebody is able to remember because God gave him a revelation and he wrote the Torah. But in all of that, Adam couldn't write. So let's get back to my thoughts. Problem with Adam is that we have a man in touch with the Creator who is so intelligent and advanced with knowledge and language that he is given the task to name all animals of the earth. But with this expert use of language and knowledge of words, some of which we cannot pronounce today, because some of these animals he named, some of us can't pronounce them today. And some of us pronounce them only after trying the word 2 or 3 times, some long cryptic kind of names for some animals. So he's able to do all these things, speak all these things, but the man just cannot write. He's able to accomplish all of this by naming all animals of the earth, and we know the earth is so big. They're finding new creatures today. Yet he is illiterate with writing. Writing, as far as I can tell, goes hand in hand with words and is inseparable from speech. Because if you speak long enough, you're going to write something down, or somebody else is going to write it for you. So writing is inseparable from speech and memory, but Adam never writes a single thing in his primitive mind state, it seems. But otherwise seemed to have been an intelligent man who lacked nothing that we lack today. And many of us credit him with being in a better condition from us because he was supposedly perfect. He was very healthy, more healthy than us all. And you see, you have to keep in mind that the reason for questioning this kind of stuff is because as I'm studying Torah, I'm finding that the way it is so incredible, it does not seem proper to me that someone would only have written this in the time of Moses or after Egypt, Exodus from Egypt and so on. It does not rob anything from Torah if it was written down right away. It doesn't. So I wonder, is someone hiding something from us? Consider the whole bit of Adam being made. First of all, this man doesn't come out of a woman's belly. So I would think if the Creator is going to make him, he made male and female at the same time, which the Bible says male and female created he them. But we are actually told at the same time in the same Bible that he made the man and later on the woman came on the scene after. After he puts him to sleep, so you can't tell how it's happening. But somebody named Moses apparently finds that out a long time later on and writes, this is what happened to you, Adam. You were made and then you went to sleep and the Most High took her out of your rib, out of your side. And note that Moses, to whom it is credited that the Torah was written by, once he learned of these things, he felt the need to write them down. But Adam learned all these spectacular things as well that were given to him in his time, that he experienced and lived through, but he did not feel the need to write. When the God of Israel at times said, write this down, write this book, and stuff like that, and Israel was so concerned with preserving works in writing, preserving things in writing. So these men of the Creator, who wanted the Creator, felt it a very, very important thing to write things down, to document things. But for some reason, Adam, the first man who was smarter and wiser, more holy than all of us, has a disconnect with the need to write things down. To the point where now we're glad to know the creation story, But if you push the creation story far enough, you wonder, is something being hidden from us? Because as incredible as the creation story is, there are some questions that just cannot be answered satisfactorily. And I'm not talking about the bigger things like how the creator could have made a sun and what is the sun really made of. They told us plasma, but they've never been up there to take a piece of it and scoop it out with an ice cream scoop. So I don't know how they're, how did he make that? Who handles that in their hand and shapes it and says, okay, you're going to burn right here, you're going to move around the earth, you're a sun. Not those big things. I'm just, there's just a lot of things when you get thinking about it. But anyway, this world that the man Adam gets dropped in has somehow a kind of mysterious power in it that has endowed him with an expert reservoir of words to name all the creatures of the earth. This man, however, cannot write a single word that he speaks. And he's not even concerned with the preservation of knowledge. The Creator wrote on Sinai, Abraham and other patriarchs and people in the Bible and so on, dealing with the Creator, they felt a need to write, but not this mysterious Adam. Can you imagine if Enoch never wrote any of his instructions down, or Moses to write the things he did in the book of Jubilees that you have to rely on to calculate holy days and so on? If they never wrote these things, how would you be surviving now with Torah in captivity? So the writing of instructions and experiences with the Creator / the God of Israel, it was always seemed necessary and important thing by those who followed the Most High. But Adam had no such desire to do that. In fact, the wisdom we learn from Torah today, it actually comes from the writing of the scrolls. So records were always kept by those who dealt with the Most High. So if they did not write the scrolls, what would we be like today? How would we come to know the Most High? What would we be studying and learning from? So knowledge of the Creator seems in some part to be, probably a great part, to be directly linked to written information. Try to be a returning Israelite today without written information from the scrolls that are placed in Bibles today. Try to be that returning Israelite and tell me how you find the Creator. So the finding of the God of Israel relies on written information. But apparently people were expected to find the Creator after Adam died without Adam having written anything about him. But someone shows up on the scene later on and they've got all kinds of wonderful, accurate things to write about Adam. So is it the problem that Adam just could not write? Or is it a problem with the dating that we've been given in history about when these events happened? Because look at it. Now I move slow with this topic, right? Because I've told you a number of times in the other videos, I was never into any of this stuff. I'm very weak with geography and history and so on. It was never my concern. growing up. But now I'm having to think of these things because I'm wondering about the mystery of this book. And when I look at it now and searching some more, I realize that they use pottery to date times and events of the past. And so even when their carbon dating testing is not quite trusted, they seem to go by known or approximate dates that are linked to various potteries that they already have supposedly established dates for. So if a pottery was confirmed to have been made by a certain group of people 3,000 years ago, then they can use that pottery to date certain other things and tell whether those other finds were, are related to that 3,000-year-old pottery, so they can date stuff like that. The trouble that hit me in my face is that they've found potteries and other artifacts from like 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, 25,000 years ago. I got books. I almost, bought another book on ancient art today. I said, you know what, just like I was in the bookstore, I said, I'll skip it this time. But here am I looking at one now. I already used it in one of the other videos. I'm not going to bother with it right now. All this prehistoric art. And I've told you already about the Jericho that they said 10,000 BC, which puts it at probably 5,000 or 4,000 years earlier than Adam. And I'm blown away in my mind. Because people were living in Jericho and making pottery and fighting wars before Adam was even born, but Adam is the first man. So are we being lied to somewhere in history? If Eden is a crime scene, it is the biggest and most important crime scene of all times. Because things are described in Eden that just does not seem to fit a lot of the other information that's out there by some people who they seem to mean well, because not everybody is trying to deceive people when they say 20,000 years ago people were living here and they migrated from here to this other part of the continent and so on. Not everybody is trying to deceive people by saying those things. So then everyone who deals with the Creator seems to write something or want somebody to write it for them. Now, Enoch wrote some stuff. They tell us there's a book of Enoch. I've read it 3 times. And I really read the rest of the Apocrypha, but that book, Enoch, I just had to see what was in it, so I read the Apocrypha. I read it 3 times. It was a crazy read. I said, I'll never read this again. And I'm thinking today, I want to read a part of Enoch again. Not all, but I want to read a couple of the latter chapters, looking into some other stuff about the moon and so on. But I always thought it's strange. The Torah says Enoch walked with God and he was not, for the Most High took him. This man who has some kind of incredible information, the likes of which no one else quite has in the Bible. And all we're given of this man is just that he was not, for God took him. And then someone else says there's an extra biblical book of Enoch, and that's where it is. But somehow it doesn't seem to meet the grade, so it can't go in the Bible. It has to be canonized somewhere else. Yet this was the first man to have ever walked with the Creator to the point where the Most High says, you just don't belong down there. But even this man, Enoch, somehow he had some wisdom to write some stuff, it seems, if his book is true. But all that he learned from the Creator, he said, I'm going to write. But Adam doesn't want to write anything. And the normal thing that we're told is that it is because Adam could not write, because writing was not yet known, it was not invented. Alright, so trying to look up here at if Enoch, they say, is a seventh generation from Adam, then it seems Enoch was born while Adam was still alive. I'm looking here from BibleSoralta.com, the time shared by our biblical forefathers. And it seems that Enoch was born, okay, they got Adam, Seth, Enos, let me see, so you got 600. So it seems Enoch was born somewhere around 600 and something years old of Adam. So when Adam was between 600 to 700 years old, that's when Enoch was born. And then Enoch lived 365, so he was taken away a little bit after Adam died. But so he was born when Adam was, let's say, about 2/3 of the way through his own life. And he wrote some stuff. Now, please don't tell me that Enoch did not write anything. Because the problem I'm going to have with that is that Adam doesn't seem to tell us much. He got all kinds of wealth of information from the Creator and was the first one. Like, he set a record. No one else can claim to be the first one who saw the Creator or who was walking around with the Creator and so on. This man Adam had the Creator actually personally come and visit him. And he doesn't write, he doesn't say anything much. It's like, but Enoch got all kinds of mysteries from God, supposedly through angels with strange names. What are the names, like whatever Uriah, or whatever the kinds of names. But if you look at the book of Enoch, from what I remember of it, Enoch got all kinds of complicated and strategic information about time telling and the creation of the elements and forces of nature and so on, like thunder and so on. He's got all this very, very strong stuff. They're telling me that a couple thousand years after, or at least a long time after, whoever wrote this book of Enoch wrote it so long after Enoch with such precision. And you're telling me I must believe that because I must believe God. Because if I don't have the faith to believe these incredible things, I cannot believe God. I must just take it. It's just faith. Just believe it. Don't believe that Enoch wrote this when it happened, or somebody wrote it from right when it happened. You see, if I'm a spiritual person, and like let's say if I'm a prophet and I was living like in the Bible times, like Elijah and all them, and the God of Israel take me away one night and gave me some incredible dreams and speak to me or appear to me in some whatever and start speaking some mad crazy stuff to me, just like all kinds of wisdom and future stuff, prophecies and whatever, and things that are going to come, complicated things that, mind you, just like Enoch, I never heard anybody say before, because Adam certainly didn't teach me, just like Adam didn't teach Enoch, because I don't have any proof of that. And so the Creator tells me all kinds of incredible things that I'd wish I had a computer to document this stuff and record them and save them in files, music files, audio files. But in order to not forget them, because I don't have some audio recording device and a computer to store them, I got to start writing right away. Because if you tell me people's minds were so powerful back then, why in the damn world were they destroyed in Genesis chapter 6? Because the thoughts of men's hearts were only evil continually. That means people were degrading right away. And if men's hearts were evil continually, that means men were not in their heart concerned with remembering what the Creator said. Adam must have wrote some shit down, because men were not concerned with remembering any damn thing from the Creator. So how come we got a full Bible today? Oh man. So if I was some kind of prophet like Enoch or so, I'd have started writing very fast, because I would not want to miss or forget any of the information. If the Creator comes and speaks to me right now and gives me all kinds of volumes of books of knowledge in my head, I gotta miss work, or if I go to work, I'm rushing mad crazy through work tomorrow, because I might lose that job for not doing it properly, because I gotta hurry run home to write the rest that I remember. Because every time I see spectacular things in the scriptures that the Creator did when He's dealing with people, somebody was concerned with writing it down. That was just a norm. And the Creator seems to me to act the same way all the time, and is concerned all throughout Scripture with having His people act the same way, to the point where He threatened them in Deuteronomy 28, if you don't do what I tell you, I'm going to put some curses on you. Why? I want you to act the same way, keep the same laws, do the same things, carry the same instructions all the times of your life. Teach them to your children, your grandchildren, and so on after. Teach them, don't forget them. Keep my laws, keep my Sabbaths. Remember my Sabbaths. Why? I don't want you to forget them. And because I don't want you to forget, I'm going to actually write it down for you, and the finger of God wrote. But Adam didn't think he should write down anything. But everybody else was concerned with writing, to the point where even the Creator was concerned with writing stuff the finger of God wrote. Well, that was just a poetic kind of description, brother. Just to say the finger of God. It's not like it's telling you something, that some kind of importance was placed upon remembering. So some kind of big effort was put in letting you know you should record this. Moses broke the tablets. Eventually they had to be rewritten. Why? Because Israel is not going to remember, so they want to write it down. Even Moses coming up in the presence of the Most High on the mountain, he felt the need to write it down, and Adam had his big encounter with the Creator, and he didn't want to write anything down. Like, pardon me for saying it's like a slap in the face of the Creator. Pardon me again. But, it's like it just kind of says to me, he didn't count it so important. Now look at this next thought here. If Eden is like a crime scene, then this enchanter that took down Eve and took them down both in the end, stole history in one of the biggest crimes ever, because I've never heard anyone read the Eden story and not think of some questions that they want answered. Some kind of history was stolen there. Something went horribly wrong in the garden. So was this Adam story really the first part of the creation? Or was this just something written later on to hide some other truth of our origin. Because if Adam never wrote, then why is somebody writing about it? You know, every time I look in all these books that I'm reading now, and reading in the Bible itself as well, when Israel was keeping holy days and keeping the laws, they always had a book, they're always consulting scrolls, because written information kept them on track, and they had to figure out the holy days. So the same way we do today when trying to figure out these holy days, now that we're in captivity, we're trying to watch the moon, we're trying to figure out stuff, we're trying to document stuff. We make our own calendars, those of us who have done, and we offer them to anybody else who want a copy of the calendar. Right? And so we make the calendars available, and we're all trying to go by this written information about how to calculate holidays and so on, and how to keep the laws and so on. We keep writing the laws on our websites and so on and so forth. We want to document stuff. So Israel back in the day were writing stuff. They're always consulting with written information about the holy days and so on, and the feasts and the laws and so on. Adam seemed to have taught his children something, because Cain and Abel were offering sacrifice, it says. And you're telling me Adam, not even the children Cain and Abel, ever wrote anything down about the holy days that Adam told them? Cain and Abel never wrote anything down about how to remember when I should offer the next sacrifice? When all the precepts in the scriptures tells me that when it came to sacrifices and holidays and so on, the children of Israel used documentation. But Cain and Abel never documented anything about the sacrifices. You see how strange this gets? Why wouldn't they have written something down? Even if they're just learning from their father Adam. He's going to tell them about all these different feasts and holidays and so on, because he must have told them something else other than just simply sacrifice. If he's telling them about sacrifice, that means he's telling them other things as well. And you and I, we want to take so many notes. Now we're doing it with our computers or files. I just fill up another hard drive. There's a second hard drive. Now I'm trying to look for a bigger hard drive to start filling up with information, learning about Torah, studying. And Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. And these children, who themselves, from what we can tell, never met the Creator like Adam did. And he's teaching them all these things about the Creator and when to do sacrifice and all. And they never wrote down anything to make sure they remembered. You tell me they never wrote anything? Why is there an Eden without writing? Damn it, why is there an Eden without finding? Because we can't find Eden. The most important place on earth, it seems. And we lost two of the rivers. Nobody knows where it is. There are no written records. Adam didn't write anything down. He was the smartest man alive. He was the only man alive. He was the only man that the Creator decided to come up and walk to like that. Actually telling him about his own diet, his own food. Because Moses didn't even get that. And the man never wrote a single thing. Nobody can find any inscriptions with Adam saying, I liked mangoes, but there is a special kind of mango that was yellow on the inside, but it had 5 colors on the outside. Nobody can find anything. When I bit into this mango, I saw visions. Nobody can find any such inscriptions. And you tell me I'm being too trivial. So pottery found 10,000, 20,000 years or more before Adam. But none of these Neolithic or pre-Adam people who made all these potteries many thousand years before Adam ever wrote a single thing. Don't you find that a strange existence? that you made all kinds of very fancy, impressive artwork, I might say too. Because when I look at some of these artwork, I'm like, man, these people from like 30,000 years before Adam, I mean, they knew how to make these potteries, colorful, whatever, well shaped, and all the other artifacts that they made. They spend almost all their waking time, it seems, in their craft. And not a single one of them making all these thousands and thousands of potteries ever wrote or inscribed a single item on one of these potteries. Never did. Because somebody has to prove to you that writing started at Sumer, so that you do not find out the real truth about what happened at the start of the earth. Because think of it. You can find everything else. You can find some old swords. You can find some prehistoric pottery. You can find some old huts and houses that were built before Adam was born. You can find ancient civilization, proof of civilization. People used to live here in this village and that village and so on, way long before Adam was said to have been born. But you must not find writing, because writing will tell you too many clear things about what went on before the Garden of Eden. And that is the shit why I do this. You can find any fucking thing. But if you find writing, it proves truth or it proves lie about something that you have always wondered in your mind. How the hell did all this start? There must be an absence of writing. It's impossible for me to understand why people made all these potteries and never thought to write a single thing on them or about them, but they actually drew carvings on them. They're so concerned with drawing everything on cave walls and on their potteries and other artifacts and on the gods that they made and so on. They will draw until they're tired on these potteries and color flowers on the potteries and so on, but they never want to write anything, but they were always talking. Yet in the world I live in and know about, talking is inextricably linked to writing. When you think of writing as well, it's another important way that man uses to give expression about his world, about his life, about what's going on in his mind. And at the richest time in history before man became corrupt, Adam didn't want to write. Prehistoric people before Adam didn't want to write. At least for the ones of us who really think people were here before Adam. But that's what a lot of research is telling. And I've not yet found anyone who satisfactorily proves that nobody was living before Adam. And it's also funny that in prehistory, they found all kinds of things that showed people were living in this and that village and community. And they did all kinds of other incredible things, but they never wrote. But now, in modern times, when the world is getting ready to end, one of the biggest things on earth is knowledge, the passing of information and writing, until you're filling up hard drive after hard drive of writing, although you do the writing with a keyboard. When the world starts, nobody wanted to write. Now the world is dying, quote unquote dying, and we're writing like crazy. Writing is so important. You can even be sued over writing. You can fall in love with writing. You can build airplanes and spaceships based on writing and documenting. You can solve great equations through writing. You can cure people by making medication, so on, whatever, by writing down your progress as you investigate different drugs or plans and whatever to help people get well from their sickness. Writing is used for so many things. If you don't have writing, it's more difficult to direct people with street signs and so on. Writing is just, we're so filled with it. But it seems strangely absent from the ancient world, which was a more perfect world. Yet our idea of what should be included in a perfect world is writing, because none of us will ever want to go back to a time when there was no writing. We might change the way we write. Less of us are using pens and pencils now, we're typing. But we think writing should continue to be. We can't imagine a world where we're not writing something. But when the world was perfect, it just wasn't necessary.